So very good. Thank you for joining part one of our two-part Teams Insight webinar series. So today we're going to focus on growing and measuring adoption. Tomorrow, June 2nd, we're going to host part two, where we'll focus on building quality as a foundation to help customers monitor, manage, and maintain healthy quality experiences. I'll share the registration link for that momentarily in the chat. You can also stay up to date on upcoming retail and consumer goods, or RCG, industry-related events, such as our June 8th Frontline Worker Summit, and I'll share that link momentarily as well, but you can find that at rcgevents.com. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. So feel free to ask questions in the chat. You can use the raise hand feature to come off mute and ask your questions. We are recording today's webinar, as you can see, and we'll follow up with a link in a follow-up email. As we close, we're going to share a help needed or a feedback link in an effort to help you in your adoption journey and make sure that we're giving you the right content that you're looking for. And then finally, as a small token of appreciation, we have a few prizes to raffle off. So stay tuned in the chat to opt into our Lucky Draw raffle. Lucky Draw is an app found in the Teams App Store, and we'll announce later winners a little bit later in the webinar. Now, let's turn it over to Diamond Walters to set up the agenda for today. Diamond.
Thank you so much, Travis. Hi, everyone. My name is Diamond Walters. I am a adoption change management customer engineer here with Microsoft. And today we'll be taking you through how to grow adoption by understanding Microsoft Teams. And I'll pass it over to Dan for him to introduce himself as well.
Yeah, hey, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. Dan Kleck, I am a customer engineer in Microsoft's adoption and change management team with Diamond as well. So really, as Diamond mentioned, both of us really focus on helping our customers and organizations using Microsoft drive adoption of our tools and products within their organization. And so as you can see on the slide, really this session, the purpose of this session is to cover and start thinking about, hey, maybe you're an organization that just deployed Teams. Well, now what, right? How are we actually driving adoption within our organization? How do we define adoption success? What does good and great look like? What types of usage reports and metrics are available in the Teams platform to help you understand your organization's usage and utilization of Teams? And then talking about a couple of more adoption resources that are available for all of you as you continue to plan for and drive through your Teams adoption journey.
So before we dive in, we're going to jump over to the chat for a quick poll to see how are you currently using Teams today.
And hopefully that'll launch in just a moment. If not, we can keep moving, but we can leverage the poll once it's ready to fire up.
Diamond, there may be a bit of delay. Why don't you go ahead and just jump in, and then we'll Travis and I can monitor the polling.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah, and so hopefully that poll will launch shortly. We really wanted to get some feedback and understanding of how everyone uses Microsoft Teams today within their organizations. Speaking for Microsoft itself, we use Teams for literally everything as it comes to teamwork and collaboration within Microsoft, right? So not only, hey, chat and instant message focused and collaboration and spinning up teams for projects large and small and collaborating on documentation, but obviously also meetings and calling. So these types of video conferences and webinars we do frequently, but also using, the PSTN calling and kind of voice over IP functionality of Microsoft Teams, as well as leveraging apps and workflow that are natively embedded into Teams to help organize our work within projects and teams. So things like using Planner to track in a Kanban board style kind of where things are in a project, and other apps that are available to us like Whiteboard for collaboration embedded directly into Teams. So really, we use Teams for everything, but it is a journey, right? And so I think to start, a lot of customers and organizations that we work with really focus on that chat piece and maybe the meeting piece, and moving into adoption of, hey, more collaboration functionality and apps and workflow functionality. That's kind of the next level of maturity and adoption as well. So as we think about kind of how we get into the maturity of using those functionality within your teams, we'll kind of go into how do we start measuring that we're making progress in those areas a little bit later in the presentation today as well. And really briefly, before we kind of dive into the meat and the bones of the meat and potatoes of this deck, I want to talk about why adoption around teams is important. And really, the takeaway here is that the value that teams provides an organization is really only going to be achieved if you think about both the deployment of teams and actual adoption and proficiency. So what the data tells us from both ProSci and our industry averages is that typically just from deploying and installing and getting teams active and out there for an organization, organizations tend to see a 36% capture of their return on investment. But to actually capture that remaining 64% of the return on investment most organizations hope for, you have to drive adoption and proficiency of those tools. And so what we see our customers usually do really well is, right, they have the functions and the capabilities in their IT organization to deploy the technology and activate it. But where a lot of organizations struggle is around actually driving the adoption and the proficiency of the tool itself. And so that's why a focus on adoption and a focus on measuring teams' usage and reporting and defining success metrics is so key for organizations to actually capture the return on their investment that they are hoping for. And so as we think about what that adoption proficiency actually means, right, unlike some other technologies or tools, Teams really isn't just, it's not just a technology change, but really successful adoption of Teams is a change in end user behavior, right? For organizations that maybe weren't using collaboration solutions before Teams, it's a major mindset shift and a fundamentally different way of working, right? If you have people that are used to storing things strictly on their personal computer and on their personal hard drives, and now you've enabled a whole new tool and technology around, hey, sharing everything you're working on and live collaboration on documents and technology, that really has a major change in the way people work and think. And so driving adoption for teams isn't just a matter of turning on the technology and training around the functionality. You really have to change the people's behaviors and their attitudes around how they work with other people within their organization. And so moving on to our next poll, Diamond.
So thinking about, and I know while we wait for the poll to come up in the chat, thinking about what does adoption mean to you. So I don't know if any of you guys are feeling brave and want to come off of chat, come off of mute and talk about what adoption means to you guys as individuals while we wait for the poll to get started.
Yeah, and maybe what we can do in the meantime. So yes, polls is unfortunately not being friendly to me here this morning. But if you wanted to, I'll throw the answer to the question in the chat. And if you want to respond, please feel free. Or if you want to raise your hand and come off mute, we can do that as well. So.
Travis, I went ahead and pushed a poll for us. So
Got it. Thanks, Doug.
Nice. So let's just go ahead and talk about what adoption is.
And
So what
Diamond,
is
for
it?
what it's worth, before you dive into, our presenters right now can't come off of mute. So we're going to have them leverage our chat, and Travis and I will work together on making sure polls land timely.
Alrighty. So what is adoption? When we're thinking about adoption of a tool, we think about it in three different phases. So we consider three different phases through our journey to adopting new ways of working. We think about the deployment phase, the usage phase, the adoption phase, and then we end the goal or the perfected state is the proficiency phase. So through the deployment phase, the focus is actually on making the technology available. Through the usage phase, that focuses on consuming the service, so building that initial usage and awareness around the tool. The adoption phase is all about that deep habitual usage that delivers tangible value, which in turn requires people to change the way they work so that way it may align with the goals of the business. So understanding that each user ultimately has to make the choice to change, we also must understand that people naturally resist change and we often underestimate the effort required to drive a successful change. When you think about adoption change management, it's essentially that engine that accelerates across these moving states. So it's a critical set of activities that we execute in an organized way to move people and organizations from the current state over to their desired future state. This is a simple way to drive individual change, to help individuals understand why the change is important, help people see the value and decide to participate in the change, teach people how to change, and give them time and the ability to change. And naturally, as people see the value, they'll continue to participate in the change, which is the proficiency and sustainment phase that I mentioned earlier, and as well as what Dan mentioned. So what you want to get to is you want folks to say, hey, I understand why, I have now decided to, I know how to, I'm able to, and I'm going to continue to. So now that Teams is deployed, let's talk about what effective adoption and proficiency of Teams looks like. So Teams has many capabilities to help you run projects, streamline processes, and automate repeated workflows, similar to what Dan mentioned to you guys earlier. The idea is to utilize these capabilities to invoke that efficient and effective use of time and make things easier for you to navigate, collaborate, automate, and store. So now we're coming up to another poll, and we want to know, do you measure success within your organization?
And that was launched in chat for everybody.
So when thinking about measuring success within the use of Teams, taking a look at it from a quantitative or quantifying the business value of Teams, when looking at work trends from a hybrid work perspective, it's important that we consider not only the impact of using Teams, but also making sure that we're using it effectively. So you can see here that the time spent in meetings has increased over 250%. So that means a lot of people's time and days are being spent in meetings. So, the important thing there is to make sure that you're using people's time efficiently. Certain things that can be sent in meetings or certain things that can be sent in chats are sent in chats. And, meetings are reserved for, those topics that are needed for, to allow a space for like collaboration and open discussion and things of that nature. So as you're thinking about how some of the things that we've talked about today apply to your organizations and teams, some of the other things that we want you to consider for your organization is what would a successful adoption look like? And that essentially means what does your desired future state for teams look like? Does that mean full use of teams? Does that mean everyone's using teams for these set of values? What is the business value of using teams? What are those quantitative and qualitative measurements that we could be used so that way we can measure against what our goals are versus what's actually happening within the company or the organization? Where will we capture our measurements? Are we going to be using dashboards, forms for surveys, the Power BI dashboards, and communication packs? How often will we measure? Will this be a monthly thing, a yearly thing? And how will we share our successes so that others may learn from them? And that's a key piece as you're going through changes within an organization, is to really share out those successes. And that can also increase adoption throughout the organization, because people say, hey, this team has successfully deployed teams within their team, and they increased efficiency, and they've increased all of these things. They've saved time. That encourages other teams to want to follow suit and do sort of the same thing.
Yeah, and so, just looking at the answers from our last poll around, do you currently measure success within your organization around teams? And looks like a majority of people right now said no. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Great thing that you're on the webinar today to get a little bit more insight into that. But I kind of want to talk about, as we think about defining success today, and the importance of understanding that success for teams looks different across the organization. And I see a lot of customers or organizations make the mistake of putting defining success on the IT organization, right? But what success means for the IT organization, which sometimes might be just, hey, meeting project objectives and timelines, right? Did I go live on time and on budget? That's not going to reflect what success looks like for the rest of the organization. And as we think about our business stakeholders and our HR stakeholders, it's important to get them in the conversation as well, because to them, it's not just a matter of, hey, is the tool available and out there? It's, hey, did I take the time to actually train my end users and my workforce to proficiently use the tool, right? Are they seeing an improvement in their collaboration? Are they seeing benefits in their day-to-day work? And have I taken the time to define what those benefits are going to be and how I'm going to measure against those, right? And is it making the employee experience better, right? Is Teams helping me attract and keep the best talent? So it's really important, as you move into, hey, we got some information on defining success. Let's actually do that in my organization. It's important to understand that that's not just an IT function, but that defining success and adoption and success metrics for teams needs to be a collaborative effort between IT and business stakeholders as well.
Hey, if you don't, Dan or Diamond, if you don't mind, Lewis has a question in regards to, do we have access to the usage reports today via the admin console that shows the number of active users per feature? He goes on to say, so we can see how well employees are leveraging all of the capabilities in Teams. I think we're going to hit on that a little bit, but I'll let you stew on that for a moment.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are going to cover that in a few slides, so that way we can kind of talk through what usage reports are available, how to go ahead, how do you actually access them, and what sorts of features or information you can get from those. So that's a great question, Lois. So the next question that we have for you guys is, what are some of the examples of how you measure success? And I know that we had majority of folks say that they aren't measuring success. So if there's anyone that is measuring success, We'd be curious to know how are you doing that today? And Doug has already dropped that into the chat for you guys to answer. So before we dive into the reports themselves, we want to talk about your success criteria, how to define your success criteria. So when you're thinking about success criteria and what does success look like for your organization, you want to consider this smart technology. So you want to be specific. You want your success criteria to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So when you have clear and specific goals, everyone's clear on what it is that we're defining. So it takes out, any ambiguity around anything. It's clear and it's measurable, so that way you're able to actually measure against these things. It's attainable. You want it to be something that's realistic for your organization and not too extreme. You want it to be relevant to your stakeholders. And a big question when it comes to adoption is, hey, what's in it for me? So while there is, from a top-down approach, there's this, huge initiative and hey, there's this large return on investment, and that's great, for leadership, but end users want to know, hey, what does this actually mean? What does this actually mean for me? Will this decrease my time spent in certain apps? Will this increase my efficiency? How will this benefit me as an end user? And being timely. So making sure that you're communicating a specific target date, answering the questions like when and how long, and actually what the timing would look like for that. So some examples of success criteria when you're thinking about what sorts of things that you're hoping to measure. So we have a few examples here. So for example, we have increased adoption. So increased usage correlates to the user adoption of technology. And the way that we would pull this data is through usage reports, using the M365 usage, and really want to point you over to this goal column, where it really touches on kind of what the goal is of the increased adoption is. So comparison of pre and post rollout usage reports showing increasing adoption of 85% per month. So you set your success criteria. You want to increase these areas. You want to have training effectiveness. You want to have reduced operating costs. You want to increase productivity, improved collaboration, improved employee satisfaction. And that should align directly up with your goals. So these are your measurable goals, or what you're going to be measuring your success criteria against. So I see in the chat here, we did have a few answers around what are some of the examples of how you measure success within your organization. So budget with quality, we see employee satisfaction, and usage reports. Those are all great answers. So moving right along into the scenarios piece. So basically, as you saw from the success criteria, so basically, when you're thinking about your scenario or your goal per se, you want to understand what business challenges, or what business challenges are you trying to address, or what is the achieve defined goals that you're trying to consider. And you want to make sure you're still kind of using that SMART guideline to make sure they're clear, measurable, and things of that nature. So when we're moving into what scenarios kind of look like, right? Effective meetings, we're thinking about content collaboration, storing communications within teams, looking at the desired outcome. So let's take effective meetings for an example. The desired outcome is to reduce time wasted at the beginning of meetings and make joining and participating faster and more efficient, regardless of the location. you can measure this by taking a look at the team's active usage, the team's conference organized activity, and the team's participants activity. The observable behavior measures, reduced room bookings, quicker decisions and faster speed of business, and more flexibility and less work time missed and less meeting cancellations due to being out of office. So let's actually dive into the meat and potatoes of this presentation, where we actually dive into how are we measuring these things? We talked about what is adoption. We talked about how do we define what success should look like. We talked about how do we measure our success and what our goals should look like. So now let's talk about how we can actually see those measurements. So today we're going to be talking to you about 3 different reports. We have the usage analytics in the admin center. We have the usage analytics in Power BI, and we have the usage analytics in the Teams admin center. So when the usage analytics in the admin center, it's a usage dashboard with a 6-month summary of product usage, user level details, and an API to retrieve data and merge with organizational data. When it comes to the usage analytics in Power BI, this is easily shareable pre-configured adoption dashboard and drill down reports to help you look at data in different ways with 12 months of data. Now, the usage analytics in the Teams admin center, this is to better understand usage patterns, help make business decisions, and inform training and communication efforts. So we'll take a deeper dive into kind of like each one of these reports and what they look like. So the usage report in the M365 admin center, it's information across all M365 platforms or services, but you can drill directly into Teams. You can see active users, Teams activity, so chats, channels, posts, and device usage. So how do you get to this report page in the first place? You go to your admin center, you go to reports, and then you go to the usage page. You click the View More button at a glance, and then you'll be able to see the reports. When it comes to who can actually see the reports, or who has permissions for these reports, these are your global admins, your Exchange admins, SharePoint admins, Skype for Business admins, reports readers, Teams administrator, Teams communications administrators. So those would be the folks that have the privilege to actually, or the permissions to actually view these reports.
And that's a really good call out, Diamond, because there are a lot of different admin roles, or just a lot of different roles within Office 365, right? And for folks that probably wouldn't need access to a lot of these tools, or shouldn't be given access to these tools, you do have some pretty basic RBAC, or role-based controls, like the report reader, that limits people to specific reports. So if you're not sure on what you have access to, or if you need access, this is a great way where you can ask your IT person to say, hey, I'm looking for these sort of reports. What sort of access should I be given so I can only view only? Just want to jump in there quick.
Thanks, Travis, for that additional insight. Yeah. So moving into the usage reports. Moving on to the M365 usage executive summary. So to better understand how effectively organizations are transforming their digital workplace, it's really critical for decision makers to know how employees are adopting Microsoft 365. So those folks who are driving adoption need to measure and track how users are engaging with M365 services, so that way they can better plan targeted user training and communication to increase usage and ensure their organization gets the most from that M365. So as you can see here, this is a This is a dashboard that takes you through the adoption piece. It takes you through the usage piece of everything. So at a high level, it's a snapshot of M365 business adoption, usage, mobility, communication, collaboration, and storage reports. And it's meant for business, for those key business decision makers. So that way they kind of have a full view into what folks are using, what's going on. So that way they can make decisions based off of, hey, we're having low adoption or low usage in this area. These are the sorts of things that we need to increase. So that way they have that level of visibility. So the adoption piece of this shows a summary of all of the adoption trends. The usage page shows a drill down into the volume of active users and the key activities of each project for the last, or excuse me, each product for the last 12 months. The communications piece, you can see at a glance. Yep, you can see at a glance whether people in your organization prefer to stay in touch by using Teams, Yammer, email, or Skype calls. The collaboration piece, you can see how people in your organization use OneDrive and SharePoint to store documents and collaborate with each other, and how these trends evolve month over month. So you can kind of measure yourself and say, hey, you know, are things getting better? Is collaboration increasing? What sorts of tools of these are being used, and how often? Also in this report is information around storage and mobility. So the product usage piece, which we just kind of showed there, it's a report that contains a separate report for each M365 service. So that includes Exchange, M365 Groups, OneDrive, SharePoint, Skype, Teams, and Yammer. And each report contains total enabled versus active user reports. So that includes counts of entities such as mailboxes, sites, groups, and accounts, as well as activity type reports where appropriate. So if necessary, if you need that level of information. The user activity piece, which we see here on the screen, these reports are available for certain individual services. So they provide user level detail. So usage data based around Active Directory. So for the usage reports, to access these reports, you must be a global admin in M365 or O365, a global reader in M365 or O365, team service admin, or Skype for business admin. The reports here are separate for the activities for teams that are part of M365 and the M365 Admin Center. So basically, they're giving you that information, and you can click, as you saw in the video, you can click on this drop down here to get a variety of different information. So Teams usage, Teams user activity, as well as have the date range. So whether you want to look at how you did over the past month or so, how you did over the past 3 months, and pull a report based off of that data. So now I will pass it back over to Travis and Doug to wrap us up.
One question here.
Sure.
Let's see here. Jeremy is asking, there's a couple of things here. Hopefully we give him the answer to his Microsoft Forms uses question, but have we seen anything today or in the roadmap for Microsoft Whiteboard usage?
Do you mean whiteboard usage in Teams specifically?
I would say, well,
yeah.
Speaking for Jeremy, maybe both usage within Teams as well as kind of standalone. And Jeremy
So
says, yeah,
here-
Jeremy says both.
Okay, so we need to get back to you on the usage for whiteboard individually, but within Teams, I believe we can track that through an app. Let me check, or through the app's usage option. Let me check and I'll drop a link here.
And before Doug kind of wraps us up here, or obviously if there's more questions, please keep them coming. Just wanted to remind folks that we've got a few raffles to give away. So in the meeting chat, if you find the lucky draw, you'll be able to opt into that, and hopefully you can win one of 3 prizes. So you still have a few minutes to register.
Go ahead and jump on into the raffle, folks. It's Travis is not kidding with fun prizes. So. As we, think about what's next, and to sum up the conversation here, and I think the best way is to utilize the chat if you still have questions, because we'll be able to certainly stay on for Q&A. So keep them coming. Is just to have a little a view internally to the organizations that you're part of today, and get a sense for how much you are measuring the impact of adoption within the organization, and then look to the tools. Tools have been a great way for our customers to get an idea of where they're at today, and also helps preface the conversations with the executive leadership teams for how to develop measures for success. And it opens up the conversations to unique measurements and discussions from perspectives of those that you don't necessarily talk to or may not talk to regularly inside the organization, whether it be the executive team, as I mentioned, or even the line of business folks, your colleagues within HR, corporate comms, and especially for those that are maybe looking at return to office scenarios, on how you may want to measure what the baseline has been over the last few years, many of us all working from home, to what it might be with a hybrid environment. But we're here to assist, and that's really what I wanted to capture here yet this afternoon is, raise your hand, let us know what we can do, this group on this call. Travis and my peers and Pratik's peers are your customer success organizations that can work with you individually to not only learn these tools, because how to find the tools and how to look at the data is one thing. How this works with anything data related, it's all about the art along with the science, and we can help align to some of the specifics that this group shared in more detail. So what are some of the global reportings on how you align to measurements that maybe like organizations have published? We're here to assist in that and have different ways in which we can engage with you directly to support those efforts. So we encourage you all to please raise your hands, whether it's on this call or going forward. Travis, there may be some ways that we can reach out to these folks again, just to give them a different way to ask for some assistance that we can do going forward. But outside of that, we certainly wish you to put your questions in the chat, and we'll address those here as we go forward. And for those of you that can't stay along with us, we wish you a great day and a great afternoon.
Yeah, and I will drop in the form that we've got set up for today. So if folks do have questions, where do we go from here? I do need help. Maybe I can leverage my Premier contract. Maybe there are other levers that we can help you on your journey. Certainly, we're here to help you guys on that. There was another question that I noticed. I just want to make sure that we got that one addressed. Let me find it here. I was scrolling quickly. There we go. In Teams meeting reports, we are unable to get subject of the meetings. Is there a way to get that information? Anyone have a response for that?
Hey, Travis, this is Pratik here. Yeah, we don't have that capability today where we'll see the subject of the meeting. The reporting that we see is aggregated data as to, in terms of how many meetings the user is organizing versus attending. So that's the level of details we get. We do not have the subject information.
What I will say, thanks, Pratik, for that. So out of the box, we don't have that, but there are third-party reporting capabilities out there Swoop Analytics is one that comes to mind. There's a few others out there as well. We can find that for you and share it. But great question on that. All right, we've got about 2 minutes until the raffle winners are announced. So you can stick on, you can ask your questions, or it'll pop up in chat. We'll respond to those that get the little Sugar Wish prize. But one more time here. Thanks to the speakers. Appreciate your help on helping us kind of fine tune what adoption means and how do we measure that. Want to also kind of share a couple of upcoming events. Just put that in the chat. We've got part 2, which is our June 2nd webinar for building quality as a foundation. That's tomorrow at the same time. And June 8th, we've got a Frontline Worker Summit. That should be quite entertaining and very interesting as well. So measuring productivity, what are the tools that frontline workers can use? So with that, we have the survey link there. Please let us know your thoughts on how this went today. If there is help needed, let's continue this conversation. So thanks so much. Any last questions before we drop off and stall for the poll result of the surface in the chat? Okay, we'll just wait very patiently here for maybe another 30 seconds. There we go. Congratulations to our 3 winners. We will reach out to you individually with information on how to claim your prize. And thanks so much. We hope to see you tomorrow and at future events. Have a great day. Have a great week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.